guys, my name is Miranda and today I am here to discuss season 3 of Bridgerton, particularly why I feel like it was a bit of a letdown. I was really excited for this season. Colin and Penelope, while not my favorite couple, I know their book is really one of the favorites from people who have read it, and I was excited to get back into Bridgerton. Queen Charlotte, which was the last Bridgerton-esque thing we had gotten related to it, was really, really good, and it was kind of like an original-ish idea from the show writers, so I felt like they could do something really fun with this season and with Colin and Penelope. However, I did have a bit of a worry because I had read the second book about Anthony and Kate, and compared to the book, I feel like this season just did not do it justice for a lot of things. Kate and Anthony are a great couple, and I feel like the actors do have really great chemistry, but just in terms of what they did with the love triangle with her sister, Kate, and Anthony compared to how that wasn't even really an issue in the book, I felt like just felt more stereotypical and kind of just created drama for drama's sake. And I think if I had to pick one thing that I really didn't like about season 2, I think how it took Kate and Anthony so long to get together. So then we really didn't get to see them full on happy until the end of the season, and then obviously it's not their season anymore, so we're not really gonna get to see them fully like that. We did get to see them a little bit in this season, and I do feel like that's another issue that I kind of have with this, is I feel like the whole point of this is supposed to be about a big family that's all connected, and how their family expands and grows as the children grow up, get married, have their own kids, and yet as we get more and more seasons, they're getting rid of older characters in favor of new ones, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I just feel like it kind of takes away from that idea of I'm gonna get you invested so much in this character and this couple, and then you're actually not gonna see them, or you'll see them very sporadically on screen now. Even Colin and Penelope, I feel like there's more I would have liked to see about them, and just wrapping up the season and being okay, this is probably the last time we're gonna really fully get to see them for a long time, is frustrating. So overall, I think I was just disappointed with this series. It started with the fact that it was split into two, which I know was a Netflix idea. I read somewhere that they had gone to the writers, the producers. I don't know if the show was fully filmed yet or if it was fully written, but basically being hey, we're thinking that we would like to split this in two parts. How do you like that idea? I don't know how exactly it was presented because I read about the writer showrunner talking about it. So obviously she's not going to be Netflix came down and was you guys gotta split this in two, because she's obviously going to put more of a spin on it. But it sounded like they were hey, would you mind? Would you like if we split this in two? Is that okay? And they were yeah, actually that works good, because halfway through this season is when they kind of flip things on their head anyway. So they were if we split this in half, it should work. I personally never thought it was a great idea. I think there are certainly some Netflix shows where splitting it into two parts works, but I feel it's very obviously kind of a grab to get it, so you can't just watch this show for a week and then not watch anything on Netflix. You can't get through a whole season, be I like that show, and now I'm not going to watch anything until the show comes back in 3 years. So I feel it just didn't work, and I feel overall it contributes to that kind of streaming fatigue a lot of people have, and I've seen people talk about this, where back in the day, back in the dizzle, when we were growing up, you had syndicated shows that ran for 24 episodes that kind of went from September to May and were fully they didn't take these breaks like other shows do, and streaming has reduced that, where it's yeah, you're getting longer episodes, but they're so tiny the length of the season. So this one's 8 episodes, which I think is on par pretty much for Bridgerton actually, and it does work sometimes. I think season 2 kind of dragged on honestly, but again, I feel that was kind of the storyline in the love triangle that they went with that made it drag on. I feel Queen Charlotte worked very well. I think that was 6 episodes, and that worked very well. It was a condensed story, you knew kind of where it was going, and I think that worked well. This kind of series, I feel especially with going from a friends to lovers like Colin and Penelope have, especially with them they've been there, but more so in the background in other seasons, I feel really could have benefited from more episodes. I mean, even if it was just 10 or 12 maybe, I think I would have liked that better, because I feel there was such a jarringness to being we started with it, Penelope being so angry at Colin for what he had said at the end of season 2, and then she kind of forgives him pretty quickly. It's either by the end of episode 1, I think she kind of is alright, we'll move past this, and I just would have liked to see him kind of have to grapple with, for once, being the one that has to reach out to her and do more of the seeking out, whereas she usually is the one that does that. I think it just would have been nice to see him more on the back foot, and we did get to see part of that, but I just feel like everything kind of felt sped up in part 1, where it was like she forgives him, and then they kiss at the episode 2, and then episode 3 is when he's starting to come to realize, oh my gosh, I have feelings for her, and then episode 4 is when he's like ready to full on be like, I like you, like forget Debling and all that. And I just would have liked to see a longer courtship with Debling and Colin kind of realize more of his feelings and interact with how that's all going on, of going from like, oh, am I just like jealous that I'm losing my friend? Am I jealous maybe that she's getting married and maybe that's something I want to do? Instead of just all of a sudden being like one kiss and he's like, one kiss is all it takes and he's like obsessed with her. I think it just would have been nice, since we have seen Penelope so in love with him and unintentionally or not slighted by him for the last few like seasons. It would have been nice to see him in that position for longer and seeing how he deals with it, and also just being like, yeah, this is kind of like your karma for not realizing what you had when you had it. I also think just Colin in general, there was a disconnect with his character as we've seen him versus how everyone in the show talked about him. Like, I know people on Twitter were already talking about it when Violet says the line about, like, you so rarely put yourself first, you take care of everyone else, and this isn't saying that Colin's a bad character, but people were like, this man has been on tour for the last 2.5 seasons. Like, what do you mean he doesn't put himself first? I think there was a lot of trying to take Anthony's qualities, especially Anthony's qualities from the books, with his duty to his family and, you know, putting himself last in terms of other people and trying to stick those onto Colin, which is bad because you took away Colin's personality. Like, there was also this, like, kind of left field thing about writing that I feel like was, like, very sporadically thrown in there, where I feel like they could have really developed that more and focused on, like, Colin's actual personality traits. I do think he's a great brother. I think we do see him being a great friend and stuff like that, but he's someone that had a lot of growing to do and maturing to do. So I feel like to be like, he's always kind of been like this, I put other people first kind of thing. It just didn't work in the story, and I feel like it was a disservice overall to not only his character, but what Luke could have done with the character had they decided to focus on other characteristics of, like, what it means to be the third brother and what it means now that your older brother is married and your younger sister that you're closest with is married and stuff like that, and grappling with the idea of that. I think they just could have done that a lot better. Part 1, though, I will say overall worked. It felt fast-paced and like their relationship was kind of going fast, but I did get why, since it's only 8 episodes. Part 2, which just came out, is where I think this season overall just kind of fell apart for me. I feel like overall, I realized this like by the time we were watching episode 7, I think, or maybe it was episode 8, really, but it felt like for a lot of it, Penelope and Colin felt like secondary characters. And I feel like this has always kind of been an ensemble cast, obviously, with having that big of a family. But I think you could definitely see, as opposed to like the focus on like Daphne and Simon in season 1, there were definitely times where I'm like, why aren't we with Colin and Penelope right now? It felt like it was such a disconnect between either they were on the same page, totally happy, totally in love, or just not on the same page, not talking, being like really like distant to each other after their whistle down secret came out. And I feel like I just would have liked to see more moments of them just like little every day-to-day things, just talking, just hanging out, just being happy, because I do think with the whiplash of how fast we moved in part 1, then having part 2, I felt like the chemistry was missing in some places, which is wild to say because they have such great chemistry, like we've seen it, but I just felt like because we didn't see those like day-to-day things, it just kind of felt like there wasn't that time to develop it, and then that natural kind of everyday stuff that we would see of like how we saw with Kate and Anthony even in this season, you know, like that little stuff of just them waking up together, them like just going out and doing like their daily stuff and being excited to talk to each other. I feel like we missed out on a lot of that, and that also could have been a really nice spot to see more of her encouraging his writing. Like, we got a little thing about her asking to see more of his writing and stuff like that, but I feel like they could have talked about that and connected about that, and I just feel like there was a lot of wasted opportunity. My friend, when we were watching it, was even saying, like, Colin as a character can be very jarring, because it's like when he's mad, he's just so mad and doesn't, like, take the time to hear people out or, like, you know, like, get to explain their side of the situation, and he's just so, like, all or nothing. And that's kind of what we saw with Penn when he decided that he wanted to be with her. It was all or, like, it was like, I've loved you, like, I just didn't see it, blah, 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 which is cute, and I do think that is how their relationship developed, but again, that's something that takes time. It's not like a enemies to lovers where it's kind of sometimes this, like, obvious passion connection from the start, like we saw with Anthony and Kate when in the whole like riding with the horses stuff, where there was obviously like an attraction that was then had to be pushed down for the sake of duty and stuff like that. I feel like with this it takes time to develop and see it, and they just didn't put in that time to develop, which was a detriment, I think, overall to the season. Again, as an ensemble cast too, I feel like, yes, you do have to start setting up other storylines, which we've seen and has worked well, I feel like, in the past with Penelope and Colin specifically. Like, they never overtake a season, but I feel like you could definitely tell that they were starting to become something in season 1 and season 2. Whereas in this one, as much as I did love Francesca and John, and I did love the Modricks too, I think they were really fun, and all the Featherington stuff, I feel like it just felt too much. It felt like it was taking away, specifically in the last episode, when you would get these serious scenes with Colin and Penelope that I would like to see develop more, and then it would cut to Benedict and all he had going on. And I love Benedict as a character, and I do think it serves an important arc to what his storyline is going to be. But unless he's going to be the next main, which it doesn't seem like he's gonna, I don't see the point in like continually cutting away to like this serious moment with Penelope and Colin and just taking that time away to go and see Benedict just like having a threesome. Like, you know, it took away from it, and it was so jarring to be like, oh, like serious moment, and now they're making out. And I love him so much, but it just was a disservice to the season as a whole. Like, I think one of my favorite Benedict moments this season was actually the moment of him and Eloise talking on the swings, of being like, you know, they're both confused and stuff like that, and it's that kind of recognition of, hey, we're both confused, but at least like we're confused together. Like, it's not like everyone else has this all figured out and we're just like the only ones in the world. Like, they have each other. So I just felt like you didn't need that much of him making out with Paul and whatever the lady's name was. I think we got the idea, but it was just so always jarring, where it's like, oh, serious Penelope and Colin moment, cut to Benedict. Like, I felt like that's where we could have used some more Penelope and Colin moments. And even like compared to, I feel like, what everyone talks about with season 1, where there was just like basically a whole episode of Daphne and Simon hooking up everywhere in the house. Compare that to Colin and Penelope. Like, we had the carriage scene, which was obviously amazing and great, and then we had the mirror scene, which was good, and then over there all, there was nothing really else. I feel like there was a lot that was actually cut out that I was looking up. I saw a thing on Twitter where people who had like seen the episodes beforehand were talking about scenes that had been deleted, and a lot of the scenes are ones I would have liked to have kept, and I think I would have rather kept over it being like Benedict stuff or like more of Francesca. And again, I do love Francesca, but I just feel like having her wedding in Colin and Penelope season was overshadowing. Even if you do have to kind of start to set her storyline up more because there's a lot to it, it was just, it took away from it. Because even like that last episode, it felt like Colin and Penelope were so on the outs for so much of it. And then when they did make up, we just saw like a quick little like scene of them at their house, and then that was it. You know, it was weird. Scenes from part 2 that were cut, according to screeners who saw the original episodes. We had Colin going home with Penelope after he finds her at the modiste, angry sex / broken furniture. That would have made perfect sense, because I did think it was weird how he was like, I'll just see you tomorrow. Laying in bed together talking about publishing Colin's manuscripts, again, would have been great and added to Colin's character, and also that kind of show how Penelope has always believed in him and makes him believe in himself and gives him more confidence. Colin whispering sweet nothings to Pen in front of the mirror, kissing her neck, being playful, and then a long sex montage. I tried to combine the word in episode 8 where Colin goes down on Penelope. I think that kind of stuff just would have worked better, and it would have made it so their relationship, you got to see more of it. And again, I think there's just this overall, they're losing the arc of like it's supposed to be one couple predominantly throughout the season. I feel like it didn't feel like Colin and Penelope season in the back half in part 2, and if you're really gonna keep splitting these seasons, and not only that, but have such a long wait in between seasons, you need to have a more focused idea of what they are, so you can't clearly compare. Like, part 1 was so much better, in my opinion, than part 2. Part 2 was kind of just all over the place. It focused too much on other characters and not on Penelope and Colin's relationship and dealing with all that. I feel like the Whistledown secret was such this big thing, and also Eloise and Penelope making up was such this big thing, for then it to just kind of not be resolved, but just kind of always be on the backhand of like, we're gonna focus on this afterwards. And that was really overall frustrating for me. I think episode 8 lacked a cohesiveness. It didn't feel like a final send-off for Colin and Penelope, and knowing that like this is probably the last time we'll see them this predominantly made it even the more sad that we didn't get to see more of a send-off to them. I mean, like, getting that last scene where literally we saw a 5-second thing of them just like kissing in bed, it felt so awkward, and it was spliced with all this other stuff that I just think, I don't know, there's so much stuff that like would have been fun to see. Like, it would have been fun to see Colin discovering that he's going to be a dad, Penelope telling him she's pregnant. Like, there's so much stuff that they could have done and focused more on them, and them choosing to instead focus on Francesca and John, which I am excited for that storyline, but I also feel like they're doing a disservice to that. Not because they changed Michaela. I literally like think that's going to be awesome, and I'm really excited to see how that goes down. But if you've read the book, Francesca really does love John. And I think she does love him in the show, but there's always, coming from Violet even, this idea of like it's not her true love. And in the book, that could not be farther from the truth. John is her true love, and when she loses him, she's really disheartened and thinks like, you know, that's it for me. Like, I had my true love, even though I'm only like 20 something. It's not going to happen for me again. Like, that was what my mom and dad had, and I had that, but it's over now. Whereas in the show, it's very clearly like she's like, I'm happy with John, but then she sees Michaela and she's like, oh boy, now this is what you're supposed to feel like. This is what her mom was talking about, like not knowing your name, stuttering, all that stuff. And I just think that does a disservice to her and John's relationship, because he is the love of her life. She just happens to have another love of her life after that with Michaela in this, Michael in the book, but Michaela in this, and them just having it always be like, well, you know, your mom doesn't think it's the love of your life. And then we see her meet Michaela and it's like, oh, that's what it's supposed to be like, is I think rude to John and her relationship. And it definitely is also like another chance of them losing, showing all the different types of relationships, because like we got enemies to lovers with Anthony and Kate, we got friends to lovers with Colin and Penelope, we kind of got like an arranged thing going on with Simon and Daphne, and also I would say like kind of friends to lovers, you know. So then to get, I feel like, Francesca, who's like, you know, it's not butterflies and like big fireworks for me, but that works for her, to then be like, actually, it's just because you didn't meet, like, you didn't feel how you feel about this guy, I think is sad to me, because I feel like she does love John in the books, and it just was kind of sad that they were like, actually, your mom was right. You should be feeling fireworks and all that. So I overall too really wish that they would just go with Benedict or Eloise for the next one. I feel like I wish that they would focus on the main ones that we have known since the start before going to like the newer characters. Francesca as a like pretty big main we've only had in this season when her recasting. So if we switch to her next season in Scotland, we're like, yeah, we'll have Eloise, but it'll just feel different. It's not at the Bridgerton house. I would prefer it to be Benedict or Eloise, honestly, and I feel like I would prefer them to just kind of wrap up the older siblings, and then in the side of that, like spend time developing the younger siblings and see them kind of have their dalliances and stuff like that, and start to care for them, instead of just being like, actually, Benedict and Eloise have been around since the beginning, but we're still not doing their season. I just think there's a lot of like choices that they're making that don't particularly work, and I think they're losing sight of the original idea of like, you're supposed to be completely consumed with this couple of a season, and it's not like, you can have your side storylines, and like I said, I think some of them do work. I think having the Featheringtons and have Penelope repair her relationship was really nice, and it tied in well to the theme. I think having the Modricks and all that they were dealing with starting to be in society and how that kind of changed them, but also how they were rebelling against that idea of like having to change, worked and was really nice. I think Francesca and John, if they had scaled it back a little, would have been really nice. Like maybe if we had not seen their wedding, I mean, you have to show me their wedding, but I don't see Anthony and Kate's. I don't understand it. Like if they had just been like, we're married, simple ceremony, all that, like they weren't the main, so I wouldn't have been upset if we didn't get to see their wedding. I think that works way better, especially if it's going to be like Anthony and Kate and Simon and Daphne, where eventually down the line we're not even going to see these characters anymore, you know? Like, it's like, give us as much time as we can with them when it is their time to shine, and then move on and make it so like we're all happy and satisfied and everything feels cohesive, and it doesn't feel like they are secondary characters in a season that's supposed to be about them. So yeah, if you have seen both parts of Bridgerton season 3, let me know your thoughts. I think season 2 just was a flat ending for me and just disappointed. There were times where I was like, can we cut back to Colin and Penelope? There were times where I just felt like there was a distance between them, but instead of like focusing on that and how they were each reacting to it, they were just switching to other characters and talking about that. And I think it just could have been done a lot better. So yeah, let me know what you thought of this season down below in the comments. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And I also need to know who you think the main is going to be. They said it was going to be obvious like who it was, but also like, I feel like it's gonna be Francesca, but then I also saw an interview before season, like part 2 came out, and they were like, Francesca's story is gonna take like a couple seasons to develop, but then it's like, are her and Eloise just gonna be chilling in Scotland for the next season and like not a big focus? And then it's on Benedict, because he did mention like coming back for the masquerade ball, which is where he meets Sophie. Oh my gosh, and also Cressida. Can we talk about that? What was the point of that? I don't understand a character's arc if like they're just gonna start and stop in the same position. You know what I mean? Like, what was the point of having her be with Eloise and be friends if by the end of it Eloise is like, I shouldn't have been friends with Cressida, like everyone was right. And then like Cressida, yeah, we learn more about her home life, but it doesn't make me feel any different for her that she's mean to Penelope and like tries to ruin the Bridgerton's life. You know what I mean? Like, if you're gonna give me a background to justify someone, have it be that their behavior changes, because I don't care that like you have a lot of pressure from your dad to marry and stuff like that, and you're gonna get sent away if you're mean to everyone else. You know what I mean? So that was also a weird choice to me of like, you made it so they're friends, no one liked this from the beginning, and then at the end it's just the moral was, oh yeah, she shouldn't have been friends with her. Like, babe, I could have told you that way back when. So I just think there were a lot of weird decisions and a lot of not great decisions. So yeah, let me know what you thought of this season and who you think the main for next season is going to be. Apparently it's going to come out in 2 years, so we got a lot of time to guess. But yeah, thank you guys all so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!